Hi, how's everybody doing? I wanted to make a quick video before I started working. I'm working in a medical office, and at home I'm so fried I can't even think about doing a video. I just need to decompress or meal prep or do whatever it is I have to do to push through. And I'm pretty sure everybody can relate to that, whether you have to stay at home all the time or you're still an essential worker and you're going out and working. So I want to just kind of check in with everyone. I want to share with you some of the things that I make connections. I like to notice patterns. I'm not trying to initiate any kind of conspiracy thing or anything like that. I just like noticing things that are connected or patterns, and what you choose, how you choose to interpret that. I'm curious, but I try not to read too much into anything because you don't know what you don't know, right? So, Chinese medicine is something I studied in school and it's not really fresh in my memory. So, I printed a few things. So, I'm going to look down at them to remind myself of the things I wanted to mention. But in Chinese medicine, this is the year of the young metal rat, which is interesting because a rat is the first animal in the 12 animal zodiac wheel in China. And the metal element is related to the lungs, the lung and large intestine, the yin and the yang and the yin. And I just couldn't help but think about the fact, especially with yesterday being April Fool's Day, which is also the beginning of something. So the fool, like in tarot, also, that's kind of where it came from, is Loki bringing on chaos. And there's intense chaos before major change can begin. And the change is always for the better, but the chaos that it ensues prior, which is what the Fool card is, it's beginning a journey, and sometimes a whole bunch of chaos happens because you're naive and you're not really aware of all the possibilities or you haven't thought it through. And then you begin a journey and you have to learn all of this stuff the hard way. So that's what the Fool represents, and that's that's a very loose interpretation of the beginning of April Fool's Day. So since it was April Fool's Day, the first day of a journey and major change, and we're experiencing so much chaos right now, and it's the first animal in the Chinese zodiac, which is also the beginning of something. It's a beginning of a 12-year cycle in China. And it's a metal year, which is related to the lungs, and lungs emotionally hold grief. And what we're collectively feeling is a significant amount of grief because we're also going to grieve an old way of life because we all know that things are going to be different forever now. Our world is going to be different, and maybe probably for the better, but that doesn't mean that we can't grieve plans we had or dreams that we had or a way of life or people that are going to change, people we've lost. So crying is a good, healthy expression of the metal element to keep the lungs healthy. So if you feel like you need to move that emotion anywhere, if you need to move it, if you feel stuck, there are a lot of ways, and you can look it up online, to balance the metal element in keeping the lungs healthy in Chinese medicine. Some examples I found on a website online of how you can tell if there's an imbalance in the element of your metal, which is lung and large intestine. Inability to let things go is one thing, because if you're constipated, it's sometimes related to not being able to let something go. And if you're trying to grieve and you feel like you need to cry but you can't, or you feel like you're crying too much and that feels like an imbalance, it probably is. You know yourself better than anybody. Another thing that this article mentioned was integrity can turn into hypocrisy in imbalance or blockages. Fair relationships bend to authoritative punishment. Structure turns to rigidity. Perfection seeking leads to disappointment. Logic turns to self-doubt. And metal element is related to autumn. So autumn is about self-reflection and really looking within and letting go of what needs to be let go, large intestine. And it's interesting that this virus attacks the lungs in a metal year. It's just something that I was like, it's so interesting that out of all the And then my partner, he said, and it's interesting that they are speculating that it started with a bat and humans eating bats, which are like flying rats. I don't know how true any of that is. It's just something that you can't help but think about when you have a little bit of time on your hands and you're trying to make sense of your new world and this chaos that's happening around you. So, in the spirit of April Fool's being yesterday and the Fool card and metal rat year, know that this is the beginning of something, and it is important to honor any grief you're feeling. Notice how you're feeling between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. because that's the peak time in your time zone of when the lung or large intestine is healthiest. So that's when you should feel as though you're having a bowel movement. That's the best time to have one. But if you're waking up or you're restless during those times, it could be the grief is not being processed too. Also, nose, skin, hair are all related to the lung and large intestine. So as you can see, I've got breakouts everywhere, and that's because my metal is all out of balance. And spicy foods help balance it, and so does the color white, which interestingly enough, in China, white is related to death. Not black like in America, it's white. Because they see death differently. If you study Taoism and read Buddhist teachings too, then that would make a little more sense to you. But and the direction is west. So I think it's interesting, all that stuff, what metal is in Chinese medicine and how this all started in China and how we're in the beginning of, if you're looking at Chinese medicine, a 12-year cycle. And the rat comes along and stirs things up and creates a little chaos so that we can have a fresh beginning. So what does that mean to you? What are you going to create? You can create your life now. It's almost like we have a blank slate. As frustrating and awful as it is, how do we do that? Let me know in your comments.